The house stood at the far end of the town, where the road cracked and the streetlights stopped working. No children played near it. No dogs barked at it. People walked faster when they passed it. The house was old, very old. Its wooden walls were faded and weak. The roof sagged like a tired back. The windows were dusty, dark, and silent, as if the house was watching but refusing to speak. People said the house was cursed. Some said people went missing there years ago. Some said screams were heard at night, then suddenly stopped. No one ever stayed long. That was why Ethan Hale bought it. Ethan was not brave or special. He was just tired. He worked long hours at a warehouse lifting heavy boxes, coming home to an empty rented room. He had no family left, no one waiting for him. The noise of the city hurt his head, and the silence of loneliness hurt his heart. The house was cheap. Too cheap. The seller avoided eye contact. "Are you sure?" the man asked. Ethan nodded. "I just need a place to sleep." The first night was quiet. Too quiet. The air inside the house felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. Ethan unpacked slowly, placing his old couch and small table in the living room. The floor creaked under his boots, but old houses always did that. He cooked a simple meal and ate alone. Then he went to bed. That was when he heard it. A sound. Soft. Weak. Almost not there. At first, Ethan thought it was the wind. Then he thought it was a pipe, but the sound came again. A faint scraping noise. From below. He sat up in bed, heart beating faster. He listened closely. The sound was not random. It had rhythm, like fingers slowly dragging across wood. "Rats," he whispered to himself. But rats didn't cry. The sound changed. It became a small, broken sob. Ethan froze. The crying was very soft, like someone trying not to be heard. It came from under the floor, deep inside the house. It sounded tired. It sounded afraid. Ethan grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the hallway. The crying stopped the moment he moved. "Hello," he called out, his voice shaking. No answer. He searched every room. The kitchen, the bathroom, the living room, nothing, just dust and old smells. When he returned to bed, he told himself it was stress. He slept badly. The second night, the sound returned. This time, it was clearer. A whisper. Not English. Not any human language. But somehow, Ethan understood it. "Help." His blood ran cold. He followed the sound to the living room. The floor felt colder there, even through his boots. The boards looked normal, but something about them felt wrong. He knelt down and pressed his ear to the floor. The whisper came again. "Please." Ethan stood up quickly. His hands were shaking now. Every instinct told him to leave, to run, to call someone, to pretend he never heard anything. But another instinct, older and stronger, held him in place. Someone was suffering. On the third night, Ethan made his choice. He bought a crowbar, a hammer, and gloves. He stood in the living room, staring at the floor. The house felt tense, like it knew what was coming. "I don't know who you are," he said softly, his voice breaking, "but I'm here." The crying grew louder. Ethan pulled up the first floorboard. The wood cracked loudly. A sharp scream echoed from below. Ethan's heart nearly stopped. "I'm sorry," he shouted. "I'm not going to hurt you." He tore up another board, then another. Under the floor was not dirt. It was metal. A hidden space. A prison. His flashlight revealed a small figure curled tightly inside a cage. Thin, trembling, not human. Her skin shimmered faintly like moonlight. Her arms were covered in scars, deep cuts, burn marks, and old wounds layered over each other. Chains were locked around her legs. Two glowing eyes looked up at him. The girl screamed and covered her head. "No more," she cried in broken words. "Please, no more pain." Ethan dropped the tools. Tears filled his eyes as he whispered the only thing he could think of. "Oh God, what did they do to you?" And in that moment, Ethan understood something terrible and beautiful. The house was never cursed. It was screaming. Ethan knelt beside the cage, heart hammering so hard it felt like it might burst from his chest. The girl, her skin pale, almost silver in the dim light, shivered violently. Her glowing eyes were wide, full of fear, pain, and disbelief. Every movement of his hands made her flinch. He wanted to speak, to say something soothing, but words felt useless in front of such suffering. He slowly lowered his hands. I won't hurt you," he whispered. His voice trembled, but there was a steel in it too. "I just want to help. Can you trust me?" The girl's lips moved, barely forming sounds. "Humans hurt me?" Her voice was broken, tiny, like glass shattering. Ethan felt a pang in his chest. He hated the thought of anyone, human or not, causing this much pain. But this girl, she was different. She was not just a stranger. She was alive, scared, and trapped, and that was enough for him to fight for her. He searched around the cage, looking for a lock or a mechanism. Rusted chains clinked as he touched them. He tried not to make too much noise, but the cage was old, and every metal link protested under his fingers. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, the lock clicked open. The chains fell, clattering to the floor. The girl gasped. Ethan reached out his hand slowly. "It's okay, you're free." For a long moment she didn't move. Her body shook, but her eyes never left his. Slowly she slid out of the cage. She was light, fragile, too fragile. Ethan caught her before she could fall. Her arms clung to him like she feared he might vanish. "Do you have a name?" he asked gently. She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Then I'll call you Sail," he said softly, remembering names from books he read as a child. Sail. It sounded gentle, human enough to be safe, alien enough to belong to her. Ethan carried her to the living room couch. She didn't speak. She only curled into a ball, staring at the floor. Her breathing was shallow, afraid. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, careful not to touch the scars, though his heart ached to reach out. Hours passed. Silence filled the house. The wind outside moaned through broken windows, and the creaking floorboards whispered of old secrets. Sail didn't eat. She didn't speak. She only watched. Ethan sat beside her, unsure if he should sleep or keep vigil. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke in a whisper that rattled him to his core. They kept me, humans, black marks, my blood, my mind." Her words were jagged, broken by sobs. Ethan swallowed hard, his fists clenched without him realizing it. "They won't hurt you again," he promised. "Not ever, I swear." He didn't just mean it. He felt it deep in his bones. He had no power to change the past, but he had the strength to fight now, and he would fight for her. Sail flinched at every noise, every shadow, every flicker of light. Ethan stayed awake that night watching her. He thought about what kind of people could trap a child, or a being so small, so innocent, and cause such pain. Rage burned inside him, but he forced it down. First, she needed safety. Then he could plan what to do next. By morning, she still hadn't spoken much, only whispered fragments of words. Ethan sat beside her, holding a mug of coffee he didn't drink. "I don't know what to do next," he admitted. "But I will figure it out. You're not alone, Sail, not anymore." For the first time, she let her hand brush his, tiny, hesitant, like a scared bird touching the ground. Ethan felt her fear, but also something else, trust. A fragile, delicate trust that he could not break. He promised himself silently that he would protect her, even if the world was against her, even if no one else believed her story. Ethan knew it would not be easy. Whoever did this would not simply let her go. They would come back. And when they did, he would be ready. He had no weapons, no allies, only his 2 hands, his stubborn heart, and his determination. But for now, the house was quiet. Sail curled beside him on the couch. Her glowing eyes slowly closed, and for the first time in years, she slept without chains. Ethan watched her, feeling the weight of what had begun. Saving her was just the start. The world outside the old, broken house had no idea what had been found beneath its floorboards, and neither did he. But one thing was certain, he would not let her suffer again. Not ever. The morning light spilled through the cracked windows, but it did little to make the house feel safe. Ethan had spent the night watching over Sail. She slept lightly, her breathing uneven, her body trembling as if every shadow in the room carried a memory of pain. He wanted to reach out to touch her scars gently, but he feared that even the gentlest touch might remind her of the hands that had hurt her. Breakfast was silent. Ethan made toast and poured juice, but Sale did not eat. She only stared at the wall, her glowing eyes dim with fear. Her small hands clutched the blanket tightly, and Ethan realized how fragile she still was. "You don't have to eat if you're not ready," he said softly. "We'll take it slow. I won't rush you." Hours passed, and the house seemed to settle into quiet again. But deep in Ethan's gut, he felt the tension of approaching danger. His instincts screamed that they would come back. Whoever had imprisoned Sale would not forget. Whoever had scarred her, chained her, and tried to steal her mind, they would hunt her. He paced the living room, trying to make a plan. He had no weapons, no allies, no way to call for help without drawing attention. He was just a man, a human, against an unknown enemy. But he had something they did not. He had the choice to protect her, and he would not fail. Then it happened. A sharp noise outside the house, metal scraping on asphalt, quiet but deliberate. Ethan froze. He saw a shadow pass the broken blinds, his pulse quickened. He grabbed the crowbar from the corner, every muscle tensing. Sale stirred beside him, her eyes wide with fear. "They're here," she whispered. Her voice trembled. "They found me." Ethan swallowed hard. He knelt beside her, taking her small hands in his. "It's okay," he said, though his voice carried no certainty. "I won't let them touch you, not here, not ever." The front door burst open. Black figures flooded the entryway. They were tall, masked, and cruel-looking, carrying strange weapons that glimmered under the weak light. "Step aside," one of them ordered. "That thing is not human. It belongs to us." Ethan stepped forward, blocking their path. "She's under my roof," he said firmly. "That makes her my responsibility." The men laughed, a harsh, cold sound that echoed through the house. "Humans are weak," one said. "You will not stop us." Ethan's heart pounded, but something inside him surged. He was just one man, small, fragile, ordinary, but humans were stubborn creatures. They could fight, bleed, and endure in ways that surprised others. He tightened his grip on the crowbar. One man lunged at him. Ethan swung the crowbar with every ounce of strength he had. The sound of metal against metal rang loud, echoing through the house. Another attacker advanced. He blocked, pushed, and struck. Pain shot through his arms, and blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, but he did not stop, not for Sale. Sale screamed, a sound that pierced through the chaos. And then something extraordinary happened. Her glowing eyes flared brighter. A soft light began to hum around her, a wave of energy that made the intruders stagger back. The air itself seemed to bend and pulse with her power. Ethan had no idea what she was doing, but he understood one thing clearly. Sale was not helpless. She was afraid, yes, but she was also stronger than they realized. He shouted again, swinging the crowbar with renewed strength. Together, human and alien fought side by side. The invaders, unprepared for the strange resistance, fled into the night. The house fell silent once more. Ethan leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. Sale collapsed beside him, trembling, exhausted. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You saved me." Ethan shook his head, trying to control his own shaking hands. "No," he said softly. "You saved yourself too. You just needed someone to stand with you." He looked around the house, at the broken door, the shattered silence, the scars that marred the walls almost as much as they marred Sale. The danger was not over. He knew that whoever had done this once would try again. But now he also knew something else. Together they could face it. For the first time since finding her, Ethan felt a strange warmth in his chest. He had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but tonight they had survived. Tonight he had chosen to fight for something bigger than himself. Tonight he had made a promise, and he would not break it. Sale rested her head on his shoulder, trembling but alive. Ethan stroked her hair gently, thinking that maybe, just maybe, humans could be more than ordinary. Maybe humanity could be brave enough, kind enough, to save someone not even of their world. And in that moment, the old house, once dark and silent, felt like it might be a place of hope. The morning sun did little to calm Ethan's nerves. He could still feel the heat of the fight from the night before, the sting of bruises forming across his arms, the ache in his back from swinging the crowbar. But the real weight was watching Sale sleep peacefully for the first time. Her tiny chest rose and fell slowly, but he knew the calm would not last. He was right. By midday, the sound of engines grew in the distance. Heavy, mechanical, deliberate. His stomach twisted. He recognized that sound from nightmares and news reports. Black vans, moving silently but menacingly through the quiet town. Whoever had hurt Sale before, whoever had imprisoned her beneath the floorboards, had returned. Sale stirred beside him, her eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly as she realized what was happening. "They," she whispered, fear coated every syllable. "They came back." Ethan took a deep breath. "I know," he said, his voice steady, though his heart raced. "But I won't let them take you, not today, not ever." He guided her to the far side of the living room, where the shadows from broken furniture created small hiding spaces. But there was no time to hide. The front door burst open again, splintering wood flying in all directions. The black-clad men stormed inside, weapons raised, their faces hidden behind masks. Their eyes, the only visible part, were hard, cruel, and hungry. "Hand over the alien," one shouted. "She belongs to us." Ethan stepped forward, placing himself between the intruders and Sale. His crowbar was ready, his stance wide, his fists tense. "She's under my roof," he said firmly. "That makes her my responsibility. You won't touch her." The men laughed, a cruel, hollow sound that made Ethan's stomach twist. "Humans are weak," one sneered. "We will take her and you cannot stop us." Ethan's hands shook, but inside him something hardened. Humans could be weak, yes. But humans could also be stubborn, brave beyond reason, willing to fight for what mattered. He would not let them take her. The first man lunged. Ethan swung the crowbar with everything he had. Metal crashed against metal, wood splintered under the blows. Pain shot through his body, but he stood firm. Sale screamed, and her glowing eyes flared brighter than ever. A strange hum filled the room as an invisible force pulsed from her small frame, making the intruders stagger backward. Ethan didn't know what she was doing, but he didn't stop. He swung, blocked, and pushed, holding the line between Sale and the men who wanted to hurt her. She was frightened, yes, but in that moment she was not helpless. Together they were stronger than anyone could imagine. One by one, the invaders faltered. Their confidence cracked in the presence of human determination and alien power combined. Finally, the remaining men retreated into the night, leaving the house battered and silent. The broken door swayed in the wind. Pieces of wood lay scattered across the floor. Dust hung in the air like smoke. Ethan sank against the wall, gasping for breath. Every muscle in his body ached, every wound burned, but he was alive. Sale collapsed beside him, trembling but unharmed. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice tiny and fragile. "You saved me." Ethan shook his head. "No," he said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You saved yourself too. You just needed someone to stand with you." Hours passed, and the adrenaline faded, leaving the ache of exhaustion. Ethan cleaned up what he could and patched the broken floorboards as best he could. Sale remained curled beside him, finally quiet, finally trusting. He realized something profound. Whoever had hurt her, whoever had captured her before, had underestimated humans. Humans could bleed, humans could suffer, humans could falter. But humans could also fight for the defenseless. Humans could protect what mattered, even when it was dangerous, even when the world told them they were weak. Ethan looked at Sale's glowing eyes, now dimming as she slept again. The scars on her arms were deep, reminders of horrors he could hardly imagine. But she was alive, and for tonight that was enough. The black vans would come back, he knew. This fight was not over, but something had changed. Sale had found a protector in a human, and the world would have to reckon with that. For the first time since the day he found her under the floorboards, Ethan felt a quiet pride. Not in himself, not in his strength, but in the fact that he had chosen to act, to risk everything for another life. That choice, small and human, had made a difference. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was what humanity was truly about. The house was quiet now, but the silence was heavy. Ethan sat on the couch, Sale curled beside him, her small frame trembling even in the safety of his presence. The adrenaline from the fight had faded, leaving only exhaustion, fear, and the weight of what he had seen. Her scars, thick, twisted, deep, were a map of pain, a story of suffering no one should ever endure. Sale finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I was not always like this, she said, staring at her hands as if they were foreign to her. We, my people, we travel, we teach, we explore, we learn from others, but they, humans, some of them, they took us. They killed the others, they left me here. Her words cracked, her body shaking. Ethan felt his chest tighten. He wanted to hug her to tell her it was okay, but he knew words could not erase the past. I'm sorry, he said softly. I don't understand all of it, but I know you're safe now. I'll protect you, I promise. She lifted her glowing eyes to his. They wanted more than my life. They wanted my mind. They used pain to take knowledge, to control me. I am not supposed to remember it all, but I do. Her voice broke. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing quietly. Ethan's fists clenched. Rage burned inside him, not just at the humans who had done this, but at the thought that such cruelty existed in the world. Yet he also felt a deep sorrow, a grief for the life Sale had lost, for the innocence stolen from her. He reached out gently. Sale, it wasn't your fault. None of this is your fault. You survived. That is proof of your strength. And now you are not alone. Her small hands shook as she touched his arm, and for a moment, Ethan felt a connection that went beyond language or species. She was fragile, yes, but also alive. And life, he realized, was the greatest victory. Hours passed. Sale began to talk more, hesitant and broken at first, but gradually piecing together the fragments of her story. Ethan listened, learning about her people, peaceful travelers of the stars, and about the humans who had captured her. She described experiments, torture, isolation, and fear beyond imagination. Her scars were proof, each one a silent scream, each one a memory of a moment she survived when others had not. Ethan did not flinch. He did not look away. Every word, every detail only strengthened his resolve. He would not let her be taken again. He would not allow anyone to see her as anything less than a being with a soul, a life, and a right to freedom. They were wrong about humans, Sale whispered after a long pause. I thought no human could help me. I thought all humans are cruel, but you saw me. You chose to help. Ethan shook his head. Not all humans are cruel, he said softly. Some we fight for others. Some of us choose kindness even when it's dangerous. Today you lived because I chose to stand with you. That's what humans can be. Her eyes glowed faintly as tears rolled down her cheeks. You could have run, you could have left me under the floorboards, but you didn't. You protected me. Yes, Ethan said, his voice steady. I protected you, and I will continue to protect you. No one will ever hurt you like that again, not while I can stop them. For the first time since he found her, Sale leaned into him, letting herself feel safe. The house, once dark and haunted, now felt warm. The scars on her skin, the stories of cruelty etched into her memory, were still there. But for the first time, she was not defined by them. Ethan realized then something profound. It was not just about saving her life. It was about restoring her faith. About showing her that even in a world capable of terrible pain, there was also courage, compassion, and humanity. And for Sale, the scars were not just pain. They were proof that she had survived, that she had endured, and that she could trust someone again. Ethan sat silently beside her, holding her small hands in his, and made another promise silently to himself. Whatever came next, whatever dangers lurked beyond the walls of this broken house, he would stand beside her. She would never face fear alone again. And in that quiet moment, beneath the sunlit windows of the old house, humanity shone. Not as a distant idea or a history of great deeds, but as one ordinary man choosing to fight for one extraordinary life. The night was unusually quiet. Ethan had spent hours fortifying the house, moving furniture to block the doors, checking windows, and making sure Sale was safe. Yet, despite all the precautions, he felt an unease he could not shake. He knew her captors might return. Humans capable of such cruelty rarely gave up. Sale sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her glowing eyes flicking nervously toward every shadow. She had started to eat a little that evening, tiny bites of bread Ethan had offered. Each bite was a victory, a sign that she was beginning to trust him. Yet she still trembled at every noise, every sudden creak. Suddenly a low hum filled the air. Ethan froze, listening. The sound was unlike anything he had ever heard. It vibrated in his chest and rattled the walls. Sale's eyes widened in recognition. She rose slowly, her gaze toward the sky outside the broken windows. They are coming, she whispered. Her voice trembled, but there was something else beneath the fear, a quiet strength. Not them, the others, my people. Ethan followed her gaze. The sky seemed to split apart, light radiating like a living thing. A massive ship descended silently, glowing with silver and blue hues that reflected across the rooftops of the old town. People in the streets stopped, staring up in awe and fear. Cars screeched to a halt. Phones were raised, capturing the impossible. Ethan felt his heart pound. The ship was enormous, larger than any building, yet graceful, almost gentle. From it, figures emerged, tall, luminous, humanoid, yet unmistakably alien. Weapons glimmered in their hands, but there was no anger in their stance. Their eyes, radiant and deep, fixed on Sail. "They came for me," Sail said softly, a mixture of relief and apprehension in her voice. "But they will judge this world." The aliens advanced with a quiet authority. Ethan stood protectively in front of Sail. "I won't let anyone hurt her," he said aloud, though he knew these were not the kind of beings who feared humans. Still, his voice carried defiance. One of the alien leaders stepped forward. Taller, with shimmering silver skin and eyes that seemed to pierce through everything, they studied Ethan. For a moment, time felt suspended. Ethan's heart raced. Would they see him as a threat or a coward? "She protected me," Sail whispered, stepping beside him. "This human, he fought for me." The alien leader's gaze softened. They scanned Ethan, sensing the pain, the fear, the courage in his body, the choices he had made. "He fought armed men for one life," the leader said in a voice that resonated like music in the air. "A life not his own." The other aliens lowered their weapons, the tension dissipating like mist. "This world," the leader declared, "will not be judged only by cruelty. Because one human remembered mercy, the world will not burn." Ethan exhaled, his knees nearly giving way from exhaustion and relief. Sail looked at him, awe and gratitude shining in her glowing eyes. You risked everything," she said softly, "even knowing they could come for you too." Ethan shook his head. "It wasn't just me, it was humanity. Sometimes humans do the right thing even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous. Tonight, we survived because we chose to care." Sail smiled faintly, tears glimmering in her eyes. "I was broken," she said. "But you treated me like a person. You didn't see only what I was, you saw who I could be." Ethan reached out and held her hand, feeling the warmth, the fragile trust. "And you can be anything," he said. "Alive, safe, free, no one will take that away again." The aliens slowly retreated to their ship. Their lights shimmered across the town, illuminating every corner, every broken window, every scar. Then, as silently as they had come, they lifted into the sky, leaving a calm that felt almost unreal. Ethan and Sail watched the horizon, the house behind them battered but still standing. The danger had passed, at least for now. But something larger had been revealed. The universe was watching. And humanity, represented by one ordinary man who chose courage and compassion, had proven its worth. Sail leaned against him, her glowing eyes dimming with exhaustion. "I will never forget this," she whispered. "Not you, not tonight." Ethan smiled faintly, tired but filled with a strange warmth. He realized that sometimes small acts of bravery and kindness could echo across the stars, touching lives far beyond imagination. Humanity had shown its heart tonight, and that was a light stronger than any weapon. And for the first time, Ethan felt that even in a world capable of cruelty, there was hope. Not just for him or for Sail, but for everyone who chose to act with courage and love. The morning after the aliens left was still and quiet. The town had returned to its ordinary rhythm, unaware of the extraordinary events that had unfolded above them. Ethan sat on the porch of the old house, his hands resting on his knees, still sore from the fight the night before. Every muscle ached, and yet, despite the pain, he felt a strange sense of peace. Sail was alive, Sail was safe, and that was all that mattered. Sail sat beside him, wrapped in the blanket Ethan had given her. Her glowing eyes were softer now, less fearful, more thoughtful. She traced the scars on her arms with small fingers, a quiet reminder of the horrors she had endured. "I was not sure humans could ever be good," she said softly. "I thought you would only fight for yourselves, not for someone like me." Ethan shook his head. "Not all humans are cruel," he said gently. Some of us choose to fight for others. Some of us choose kindness even when it's dangerous. Tonight, we showed the universe what humanity can be. She looked at him, eyes shining with unshed tears. You fought for me, she whispered. Even when you could have run, even when it was dangerous, you risked your life, your safety for me. Ethan smiled faintly. I didn't do it for glory, I did it because it was the right thing to do, because you deserved to live, because no one should suffer like that alone. He paused and studied her face, still fragile, still trembling, yet filled with a growing light inside. Sometimes humanity is not about power or knowledge. Sometimes it's about courage, compassion, standing up for someone who cannot stand for themselves. Sale's hand brushed his, a delicate touch that carried trust and gratitude. She had learned to believe again, to feel hope, to trust someone in a world that had tried so hard to break her. And Ethan realized that she had also given him something, a purpose greater than his own life, a reason to fight not for himself, but for another. The house, battered and old, seemed warmer now. Its broken windows no longer felt haunted. The floorboards no longer whispered in fear. They had witnessed something extraordinary, the bond between human and alien, courage meeting suffering, kindness defying cruelty. Ethan knew the scars would never fully fade. Sale would carry them forever, just as he would carry the memory of her suffering. But scars were proof of survival, proof of endurance. They were not weaknesses. They were reminders of what had been endured and what had been saved. Later, as the sun rose higher, a soft light shimmered across the horizon. Sale stood, her eyes glowing faintly. I must go, she said. My people, they need me, but I will never forget you, never forget what you did for me. Ethan nodded, feeling a mix of pride and sadness. Go, Sale, be free, live, and remember that there is always someone in this world willing to fight for you. Before leaving, Sale touched his shoulder, a gesture of trust and friendship. Then, with a soft hum, she rose into the sky, joining the shimmering ship that waited above. The world watched, awestruck and unaware of the human who had stood between cruelty and innocence, courage and fear. Ethan returned to the porch, the quiet of the morning settling around him. He looked at the horizon, the empty sky where she had vanished, and felt a warmth in his chest. He had done something extraordinary, not through power or technology, not by wealth or weapons, but simply through choice. He had chosen humanity. He had chosen to act when it mattered most. And that, he realized, was enough. Sometimes humanity was not about history books, wars, or great leaders. Sometimes it was about one man, standing in a broken house, hearing the cry beneath the floorboards, and deciding that a life mattered. Ethan smiled softly. The old house creaked, the wind whispered through the trees, and the world went on. But somewhere far above, Sale looked back at Earth and saw what humans could be, and she remembered the man who had shown her mercy, courage, and hope. In that moment, humanity had been seen, not as monsters, not as conquerors, not as weak or cruel, but as capable of great compassion, as capable of standing for those who could not stand for themselves. And that was enough.